can't pull up the article for whatever reasons, that specific article. This is one of the few times, and maybe it's always there and it's never reported. But these are the things that we should hear about. A union is looking out for the conditions of its members beyond just pay, because there's more to working conditions than just pay. And we also do have to understand that, look, there are financial constraints right now. But more importantly, unions should be concerned with more than just pay. That doesn't mean to say that you can't negotiate for better wages. You can. That's within your right, and there are times when it's a necessity. But I'm constantly frustrated by the fact that, for the most part, okay, some other benefits, introduction of grievance procedures, leave of absence due to illness, duty allowance for extra work on the farm. These are quality of life changes that I don't really hear other unions for the public sector government workers negotiate for. All we hear about is money, money, money. And that's why I question. Look, they have a laundry list of things that they wanted to get, and apparently they got with this agreement, signing the 4%. And it will cost the government something, but at the end of the day, if your job working conditions are better, it makes your life just a little bit easier. And it might be more practical for the government to do these things than to just say, ooh, 20%. All right, let's move on to the next story. And of course, one of the big international stories continues, whether we want to hear about it or not. I am feeling very somewhat worn out about this issue, but understandably, it's not going to be settled overnight, and we do have to be concerned over Essequibo, because if things really go south, that would be bad. Now, there's a new 9-point joint declaration between Guyana and Venezuela. Will not threaten the use of force. Controversies between the two will be resolved in accordance to international law. They committed to peaceful coexistence. And one of the, and so on, right? Nothing necessarily to lead to the eventual conclusion of this, that is to say, the ownership of Essequibo itself. But more things to kind of keep language to the effect of, we will not escalate the situation further. But one of the things that I wanted to point out with this, point number 8, both states agree that Prime Minister Ralph Gonzalez, pro tempore president of CELAC, Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, incumbent CARICOM chairman, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva of Brazil, they will remain as interlocutors, and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres as observer in the ongoing concurrence. So the first 3 names, they will be interlocutor, meaning a person who takes part in a dialogue or conversation. Notice whose name is not there. Prime Minister Keith Rowley, because he is not the temporary head or current president of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, nor is he the chairman anymore of CARICOM. He is just a CARICOM member. And I'd just like to point out, and maybe it's just me, but I wanted to point out the whole notion that we must mediate between Guyana and Venezuela because of our security interests. If you take the basic principles of those statements, who does that sound like? It's somebody who we deride more often than not for interfering in other nations' affairs. We must mediate because of our security interests. Well, that sounds like America. And American imperialism. Who are we to inject ourselves? And there are other people who are positioned in an official capacity to do that job. That's what they're there for. If Dr. Cutralli was CARICOM chairman. Well, then that's different. But why do we have, I understand we're neighbors, we have an interest, but why do we have to include ourselves by our own desire? By our opposition saying that we must? What about the actual people who currently hold senior positions in CELAC and CARICOM? What about them? And point 9 actually is, this, sorry, point 8 actually clarifies that even after he ceases to be the president of CELAC, Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves will continue with his role with regards to the talk. To be a participant, it doesn't necessarily say that even then that he's mediating. So just something to point out, right? How easy it is to want to have your nation's needs take precedence over other nations in matters that directly involve them and indirectly involve us. It might sound, people might want to say, hey, sure, that's not the same thing. The principle is there. See how easy it is to act like an imperialist, even though we don't have the power. And some people say, well, that's what's important. No, that's not what's important. The mindset of how you come to your decisions, that's what's important. All right. Quick fire topics to close on the segment. Next topic, the government has deferred on questions with regards to the status of the PARE report. This is to be expected, still disappointing. The opposition was asking with regards to the status, basically to say, when could it be released, right? And the government deferred the question. We just had a situation in THA where their own presiding officer was disappointed with the amount of deferrals done by the secretaries of the various THA divisions. Now, in this case, though, to some extent, I could understand that the government needs time to fully digest the report, but I really, at some point, there's a limit to that. How much time do you really need to read a thing? And you have so many technocrats, lawyers, etc., reading the thing, analyzing the thing. If it takes you forever, then maybe you're hiring the wrong people, or you yourselves are not fit for purpose in your role as elected representatives. One or the other, because at some point there's a practical need to get the job done. You don't have forever. But I suspect that this deferral will be the first stage of stalling and denial, and eventually we will never see it. Or at least we won't see it as long as a certain husband of a certain Speaker of the House, and as well as other potential political appointees, remain on the board of PARE. That's what I suspect. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Last story. This one might actually be the most immediate concern for people during the Christmas season. And they're warning that there is an unprecedented backlog at ports of entry, particularly at the Swiss ports compound in Piarco. And they're blaming delays on Customs and Excise Division officers because this is not a backlog of last-minute shoppers. What they're saying is this is a backlog of people who have ordered in advance. And they're warning that people who have heeded the traditional warnings of please order your online shopping in advance still might not get their stuff by December 25th, because they're saying, listen, they're only allowing one item a day, or one packet a day, or something like that, or one shipment a day. Let's put it that way, shipment. And they're saying, there are 30, some of us have 30 shipments. If it's one a day, we ain't going to get our 30 done within the next 10 days. So the question is, first you have to ask where the backlog comes from. But the implication, potentially, it doesn't seem as though there is an excess of shipments. You know, is this a greater than normal number of shipments? And even then, to some extent, Customs has a duty to try to put things in place, even if it is unanticipated, to get as much of the backlog done before Christmas, because it's Christmas. So if there's a greater amount of shipments coming in, well, the sellers can't tell the customers we only have so many slots. But I'm thinking, I'm assuming that no, that's not what it is. That this is something to do with customs. They're saying that instead of one customs officer per shipment, now they need to have 2 customs officers. That more or less cuts the clearance time in half because you cut the number of shipments that could be checked at once in half. Whatever it is, I would just like to point out, like, what is the point? The point is not to be a gatekeeper. At some point, you have a job to do. Do it. And if you can't meet the demands that the nation has for Christmas presents, maybe you shouldn't be in that job. And it might not be the individual customs officer. If it's a policy decision, it could be someone above them. But regardless, it might seem silly. Oh, people get their Christmas presents late. But to me, I'm starting to think, no, this is not that silly. This is a case where somebody potentially should be fired over this. If you can't manage something so simple. Because it's not as though we're getting the guns and the drugs off the street. Let's be real. So is it under-resourced? Is it mismanaged? Whatever it is, this ain't it. This is not it. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. We'll take it in a slightly different direction. Stay tuned to talk about WS and your content capital. Your content capital. We'll be right back after this.
Simon's Musical Supplies Limited. We are the specialist in new and used musical instruments, carrying top brands like Yamaha, Pearl River pianos, vinyl and Sabian cymbals, Remo and Evans drum heads and Fender guitars, just to name a few. Also a wide assortment of music books, pan and accessories. At Simon's, we service what we sell. Trust the leader. Call us now at 625-6412 or visit us at 20 Board Street, Port of Spain.
Let the Home Store turn your house into a home you love. We offer household items, lawn and garden, paint center, hardware, plumbing, lighting and electrical, toys and storage solutions. And just for you this Christmas, come check us out for great gift ideas and all your Christmas decorations.
6 convenient locations: 6th Avenue Barataria, The Falls at West Mall, Pennywise Plaza Chaguanas, C3 Center Branch, Christmas Store at C3 San Fernando, and Eastgate Mall, Trin City.
Check out our Facebook page for more information and come visit us today. The Home Store. Turn your house into a home you love.
It comes naturally to us. Unstoppable energy. We use it to manifest a future. A future where energy takes new forms and is used in new ways for all of us. The new age of energy is here.
My name is Carl Media, and I'm the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Have a content capital Christmas. It's the best time of the year. Now I know we have no snow, but Christmas is still here. Ho ho, the Christmas shows each week for all to see. Movie classics wait for you and our local content for free. Have a content capital Christmas, and in case you didn't hear, oh by golly, have a content capital Christmas this year.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. And I have been speaking throughout this week, making observations of what I feel to be something wrong with our society. And I say it's the foundation. And one of our callers, either yesterday or the day before, he actually pointed to the fact that, you know, even how we educate our young people, certain things like values and work ethic and the principles of which should formulate good character, good citizens, contributing members of society, it seems to be lacking. And that's why we have, at least to some extent, young people who respond so negatively, in some cases, to work, so they become, you know, less productive members of society. That's on one end of the spectrum, but on the other end, of course, is the criminality, where people, for whatever reason, either have no hope or think this is the way. And this is the Christmas season, and I also started to think, well, I do find during these holidays we have words like prosperity, hope, peace, joy, love, goodwill thrown about, but do we actually practice these things? What do we practice during these holidays? They've become more commercial, and in some cases maybe even sidelined for other events. We have a piece of a short clip here to kind of illustrate one example of what we're talking about. Let's roll.
Betters Anonymous, meeting number 45. Everybody present, say aye.
Aye.
Here. Christmas is how many ever days away. And I feel like this year, we should approach things a little different.
We want a zest. We want punches.
We here, we like the best. And it's about time we do something new for Christmas.
Every year they want us to do the wrong things. They want us to go family lines and spend quality time with friends and family. We care about that? No.
Now, joining me to start off this discussion, I have, of course, Mark Anthony Peter. He is, well, he's a man of many hats. He's a man of many hats. We have one of them, one of his titles underneath. And that clip, you found that clip. It's not the whole thing. It is sarcasm or humor, or satire, to promote actually an event coming up this weekend, a fete, right? Although, to be fair to the promotion, I'm not blaming them, right? The whole thing about the wrong things about Christmas is family get-togethers and stuff. That's tongue-in-cheek, right? But the fact that they're having a fete before Christmas now, this is where we reach, December the 17th, I believe is when it says. This is him filling the desires of society not him causing a problem, and it would be somewhat of a silly reaction to say, oh, well, they're the problem, cut them out. No. I'm saying he's just meeting the desires of some, and if we have an issue with it, we have to ask, well, how all of a sudden Christmas turn into a time to fete?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, good morning, Sean. Thank you for having me again. Right away, we see in the short little clip, they're just using. Do I think that all of those people are bad? Obviously not. You know, they probably have their own Christmas traditions on their own, but they're using a sort of this, as you said, this satirical way of promoting this fete that's happening before Christmas. Now, at the end of the day, if people want to fete, people want to fete.
Yeah.
The thing about Trinidadians and Tobagonians is we do what we want, and if we don't like it, we don't like it, and if we like it, we do it, right? But I guess it speaks to the bigger picture, as you were talking about the values and the prosperity and all of the love and everything. I guess it speaks to the wider question of, are we taking our, quote, I'm going to use this lightly, quote unquote, old-time traditions of family and community, or are they like slowly dying in some some areas? And it's something that we need to always take a look at. But I would give them credit. It was very masterfully done in the video, using that to promote this fete. I mean, it's before Christmas, because usually you'll hear me say right after Christmas Day, as soon as you hear Boxing Day, you're hearing a truck playing soca.
Right, and the thing is, we're not saying that you can't have a fete, and because of that, the values are lost. Right. The satire is actually kind of leaning into an extreme humoristic example of a mindset that we are afraid of. That, you know, it's not just that we want to fete, we want to throw these other things by the wayside, and it's the aspect of, I mean, I think one of the things with Christmas is it's the most obvious example because it's so commercialized around the world, not just in TNT, that the whole idea about peace, joy, goodwill to all men, it's almost like if we give it lip service, but how much do we actually practice it? Or more importantly, because there's that whole hypocrisy of, oh, it's Christmas, let's give. And then, you know, well, it's January. Why am I giving? There's nothing to give.
Days of January.
Giving happened already, right? There's no more giving now. It's January. This is 2024. Your holiday's done.
Exactly.
And we don't actually try to live up to some extent the ideals. Not that we have to, you know, give the shirt of our back every time we see a homeless man without a shirt. But the ideals of the holiday, to some extent, that's the idealistic spirit. It kind of is on a bottle, you know, and when the sorrel done, that bottle dry up too.
Yes. So I think many of us, as you said, it's the general values and the general things of Christmas are pushed, but they are always attached to some sort of overly commercial thing, right? So what I think needs to happen, right? What I think people already do, they sort of remind themselves of what's truly important. Now, there's a way that I think of life as one of the most important lessons that I've learned. It's very important to pay attention. It's very important to pay attention to what's happening around you and within yourself. So if it is a matter of, if you are so, because the commercial could easily distract. The commercial could easily distract. And if you get caught up in it, then there are certain things in life that you miss that are, in my opinion, sent to us to remind us of our humanity, to remind us about the importance of all of these holidays, the importance of just life and love and giving and all of those things. So the commercial is okay. It's just a matter of not getting too caught up and not getting too distracted to the point where only that becomes your entire view of the season, and not just also considering the family aspect of it, the humanity aspect of it.
Yeah, because, you know, some people are tempted, big money presents. That's what Christmas is. I have to get X for my child, otherwise they're not going to be happy. And then you have crazes like the Tickle Me Elmo craze and all of that happens every now and then. Arnold Schwarzenegger had an unsuccessful movie, but a movie that basically brought up that whole phenomenon, that satirized that whole phenomenon of the toy, right? And how crazy it could turn some parents. And then we forget, well, no, what about Because I do have to ask, like, to some extent, we take it for granted that these are things that we will know. These are things that have been passed on, so they should be passed on. But are they really being passed on to younger children who might not understand? Listen, let's have Christmas. Yeah, you got your toy. But let's go have Christmas with the aunties and uncles, because at some point they might not be around. Right? Yeah. You know, like having moments with family. To a 4-year-old who's only lived 4 years, a year is a big deal, right? He doesn't understand how short a year is. But as you get older, you realize that, you know, time is precious. Everybody has less than 100 Christmases to celebrate. And then with older family, it's even less.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's important, understand why you're doing the tradition. I don't know if you've ever heard this story, but there's like a little folk tale or meme or something, I don't know. But it's over generations. So the grandmother or the great-grandmother, she cooks the Thanksgiving turkey, but she always chops off the leg and she puts it in the oven. And then that just keeps happening. And then the grandmother, her daughter, the grandmother now does the same thing. You have the turkey, you chop off the leg, you discard it, and you throw it in. And then the mother now, same thing, chops off the leg, whatever. And then one day the mother would have asked, why do we chop off the leg? And the great-grandmother said, because the oven was too small.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right?
Wow.
So you have to take into consideration why do these traditions exist, right? So if you're just doing them for doing them's sake, the meaning is kind of lost. So to the child who's only lived 4 years, as you've said.
Oh, pick one of it.
Yeah. Compared to the adult who has been through enough Christmases to know how short life truly is and how moments could change in an instant. So it's just a matter of being present and being grateful for it. But understand why. Understand why these traditions exist. I can say for myself, you know, on Christmas Day, so my house is usually the one that's busy. It's
hosting?
Yes, hosting, yes. So there was that, for a good chunk of my childhood, my cousins were living with us, so there were at least like 9 people in the home, right? And then my uncles would come over, and my uncles and my aunts and all of those things. And that still exists, and that still happens because, you know, we love the tradition. But now all of the cousins that were my age, they've all grown up. They have their spouses, they have their families, they have their children. So they are putting in their own traditions as well, which I think is good. You get to, as you progress in life, you get to make certain decisions and you get to have certain traditions that works for your family. But, you know, it just keep in mind the real reason. Keep in mind what you're doing.
I mean, that's an interesting point. Is it that on the level of families, you know, we run the risk that progress of our lives, because we know, you know, we're not all going to live in the same house, you know, all the children are not going to literally live in the same house together. At some point, at least some has to move on, right? My brother has a family. He doesn't live with us anymore. They live on the sister aisle, so that complicates things. Right. So part of it is just, you know, the challenges of your own progress of your family as the family grows, just growth, might kind of hinder, you know, and we do need to understand, well, look, it's not just about holding on to practices because we don't understand why we chop off the turkey leg, but it's about, you know, the spirits and the ideals, and then, okay, we can't do what we did, you know, for the last 10 years, but how do we maintain that with something new?
Exactly. It can be done differently, as I said, while you maintain, if it's all about community, if it's all about love, if it's all about family. I mean, family doesn't just have to be blood. If your brother lives in Tobago with his family, I'm sure he has other friends that he considers family. Mm-hmm. So it's just a matter of engaging with everyone while still keeping the general values, the general spirit of the thing. And if there's giving, if there's gratitude, you do it. You see, these are all values that are, what's the word I'm looking for? Transferable, I guess. Where it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be the thing that you do, but once the value or the spirit of it is involved in all of the things that you do, I guess the tradition does, in a sense, live on regardless.
Now, I want to scale up the conversation just a little bit, and it'll just be based on your opinion. Mm-hmm. But are you concerned or disappointed that, okay, individuals have our own challenges, but now when it comes to like companies, politicians, media houses, we all, you know, all of these nice messages, right? Even WSN, we have these nice messages. Now, we don't necessarily have the baggage that other organizations have. But my point is that, okay, well, we give out these messages, but how much is really, of substance is really behind it? And because especially, I found myself thinking, you know, between like all of the Diwali messages that we get from businesses and from politicians, and then, you know, the Christmas messages that we're going to get, and you could say that for all of the holidays, for the last couple of months, years, whatever. And I'm hearing these things, and I'm not really seeing society engaging in it. Like, is it that, you know, when they say it, the hypocrisy just kind of or are we just so jaded? Because, and I have a quote here from the weekly police briefing, and he's warning people about crime, right? But I thought this was telling, I wanted to bring him again, because a senior superintendent said, people must realize that TNT has lost its innocence a long time ago. We must not be naive. And it's kind of like, well, that's the level that we're at. And I feel as though then now these sentiments that maybe you would expect from a child, peace and earth to all. And to all a good night, like you know, in a children's Christmas movie, it's kind of lost on a society that's lost its innocence.
Yeah, I think, and by the way, I've heard that from other adults too. You know, they don't debate the what, they can debate like the when that started happening, but I've heard that from people as well. I think in terms of, okay, if an organization or corporation or whoever is pushing these positive messages, your reward is as good as your intention. So if you are just doing it for doing its sake, then the rewards, I don't think it will be a very fruitful endeavor. However, if your intentions are as pure as possible, because none of us are perfect, but if your intentions are as pure as possible and there is action to back up your words, then I think the rewards will be great. Now, should the rewards or the actions be on Front Street in public for everybody to see? That's debatable, right? Because there is a thought of, especially if you ascribe to, you know, the Christian faith, there is a sense of, you know, your charity thing should be done. It should not be done for people to see, but rather just for the person that you're helping, right? So it's a whole charity in secret type of thing, right? For lack of a better term, and keeping the humility. But I do think that we are, in a sense, some of us are a little bit jaded, some of us are a little bit fatigued with the, you know, but do you really mean it? You say this, but this is what you're doing. You say this, but this is what is happening. But in my opinion, at the end of the day, if we don't have that, what else do we have to hang on to?
The last thing I want to ask about this, because I also am concerned, we're a multicultural society. Yeah. And there's something to be said about, yes, okay, Christmas supposed to have religious roots, although, you know, some people might want to debate, you know, the commercialization or the origin or whatever. Right. But some people might say, well, that's a Christian thing, right? But to me, yes, the base is religious, so the origin might be religious, right, on a practical level. But the cultural values transcend just that religion, because as a Christian, I look at Diwali. I shouldn't have anything wrong with a festival that is about good triumphing over evil, about light triumphing over darkness, and it has cultural values that I could celebrate and I could take part of, I could support, and I should take from, especially since we're a multicultural society that hopefully celebrates all aspects of our culture and learns the positivity of all aspects of our culture. And that's one of the things where, like, I don't know if maybe part of it is we kind of, well, that's for them, this is for us. And that just boils it down into, you know, a different version of racial politics or cultural politics where we're divided, as opposed to, well, we could come together for this and we could come together for that. You could share mine, I could share yours, and we could get a better understanding and promote.
Yeah, well, one of the arguments that you often hear is, especially for those who are especially for those who grew up in, I'll use these words, repressed religious households.
Whichever religion it is.
Whichever religion it is. The argument is you grew up in an echo chamber and you grew up not being able to experience different cultures, being able to make your own decisions, right? However, sometimes you see that their argument goes to the exact, the same thing, they go to the extreme opposite, but they're still in an echo chamber of, you all grew up in an echo chamber, you all are not diverse, you all are not open to new ideas, that sort of thing. But then you reject the very holidays or the very cultural things that were probably born, or not just born out of, but the religious things that assist or kind of go hand in hand with the cultural things. And then so you're just rejecting it based, so you're creating your own echo chamber and your argument is lost at the end of the day. But I think as well, we need to get a sense of getting back to, you know, like I said, intention. Like I said, we have as you said, multicultural. We have a lot of cultures, a lot of religious festivals and things like that, and we have the privilege of engaging in all. We have that privilege. Many people don't have that privilege, and I know Christians who, you know, their parents made it a point. You can engage in all of it, because at the end, it's like that made-up war in the United States, saying Happy Holidays, taking away of Christmas,
as opposed to Merry, right?
As opposed to Merry Christmas, and then the argument is like, but I've never seen anybody get offended when I tell them Happy Holidays. It's like, because there are a lot of holidays happening anytime, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all of those different things.
Right.
But thankfully we are in a space where we get to engage, and the discrimination, and we are a very tolerant country when it comes to culture and things like that. So
well, hopefully that is not the next thing to go.
Hopefully.
Now, you made the joke that you're always here to promote things, but you do have something coming up, and to some extent, you know, WSN is also involved. So we have a flyer here for an upcoming free concert. So the man himself is putting his money where his mouth is. Technically, there's no money involved, but he's putting it where his mouth is, right? Because this is arranged by you, I believe.
Yes, I'm the producer of this show. It's called The Promised Child, a Christmas Celebration.
Right, at St. Michael's RC Church on December 17th. You know, so I mean, like, yes.
I want to
just a throwback to the top of how we open the segment. Yeah. But at 6:30 p.m., free admission, and of course this is live choral singing. I have heard some of the pieces, because we at WSN we will have a taped version of some of what will be sung, right, for you for Christmas, so you can get a taste of what Mark's Choral Ensemble will have. But if you want the full live experience, as well as the Diamond Vale Youth Steel Ensemble, not just the full live experience, but potentially extra pieces as well, right, that won't be recorded or published either on our station or on the internet, you need to go and check out the live show, and it's free, folks. It's free.
A contribution won't be taken up, so be generous. My favorite color is blue.
Voluntary.
Voluntary, but my favorite color is blue. That's why the fly is blue.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's not easy to put on all this work, and a lot of people were involved, but Mark is the main producer of the show. And like I said, we will have some excerpts, I guess you could say, on WSN during the Christmas period. I believe around the 24th or the 25th. I'm not entirely sure when it will air. But also, as we just have a little bit of time, you had the legendary Jessel Murray here. You know, Zorro, take a back seat to the legendary version. Right? And just how did the UE chorals and UE Art Steel, how did that go?
So Misa was absolutely phenomenal. I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. I got some amazing feedback. It was a lot. It was very interesting for a lot of the first years because we have a lot of first year students in the UWI Arts Chorale and in UWI Arts still as well, but mostly in the chorale. And they got they got a taste of what the professional life feels like. And at the end of the day, they were like, my feet.
Meaning the hectic
work. The hectic work.
And then, of course, having to be in front of a crowd.
And stand for...
Yeah.
So they got a taste of it, but it went really, really well. And those who missed out, well, I'm so sorry, but you can come. And like Mr. Murray said, we have a concert every semester, so you can come and... But it was nice. It was lovely. It was great.
Every semester, not every year. You could see a concert helmed by the legendary. Is it Dr. Murray or Mr. Murray? Mr. Murray. Okay. All right. So, Mark, thanks for being here once again. It's always interesting to have these conversations. And I made the analogy of art and sports, and we will be having our own sportsman to speak about the impacts on sport on society. But I think this is something that needs to be said because, as always, art is like tourism in our economy. Art is to our education system. It's the red-headed stepchild that gets sent in the corner when the budget goes down.
Yeah.
And we do need to change that.
We do absolutely.
Well, thanks for being here.
Of course, thank you so much.
Folks, let's take a break. When we come back, we open the phone lines, close out the week. You can have your say. Stay tuned to WSN. We'll be right back.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Let the home store turn your house into a home you love. We offer household items, lawn and garden, paint center, hardware, plumbing, lighting and electrical, toys and storage solutions. And just for you this Christmas, come check us out for great gift ideas and all your Christmas decorations.
6 convenient locations: 6th Avenue Barataria, The Falls at West Mall, Pennywise Plaza Chaguanas, C3 Center.
It comes naturally to us. Unstoppable energy. We use it to manifest a future. A future where energy takes new forms and is used in new ways for all of us. The new age of energy is here.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Talk About, ladies and gentlemen. Now is the time we open the phone lines. We want to hear from you if you have a large chance for the week. Don't be like some who want to call in at 11:25 when the phone lines might actually be clogged. Call in up front before the rush. You can get your chance because, ironically, even on days where we don't seem to have a lot of phone calls, for whatever reason, We have callers who have told me they're getting trouble getting through on the phone line. So please, don't wait, don't hesitate. Call up now. Let's get it out. It doesn't matter if it's something you want to speak about from a few days ago, even last week. Whatever you want to talk about is fine. We wait for your calls. And while we wait for your calls, a new story has been published online that I actually want to get into. This is the irony is dripping here, and it makes me smile. And while I find it funny in a very minor way, it's a very serious thing when you think about it, and it puts the Commissioner of Police in a tough spot, because there was the whole thing about the 900 officers who were promoted, right? And they're like, something went wrong here, we need to address this. And then the union basically said, well, no, we don't want you to address that because that won't be fair. They were promoted. How dare you take their promotions away from them? Well, apparently now there's another 109 constables who weren't promoted, who are now looking to take legal action or have taken legal action over the merit list for the promotions. So this is the flip side. Those 109 constables, they were left out. They want an audit in the merit list. They want to get their individual ratings from the Promotions Advisory Board, and they want a reason for their failure to give them their individual scores. And I guess basically they want an explanation how come we weren't promoted and 900 others were promoted. So this has been filed. This has been filed already. I'm now getting this for the first time, and I wanted to get this in before the close out of the week. I find it interesting because now the commissioner and the leadership of the police service is getting it from both sides. On one side is saying, no, you can't, and on the other side is saying, either way, it's difficult for us to not come to the reasonable conclusion that the promotions were flawed. Something went wrong. Now the question is there a way to resolve the issue to make everybody happy? That's number one. And two, should that even be done? Because the implication of my previous point is that you want to make all 900 happy plus the 109. Should that even be done to try to make all 900 happy? Is that proper? Is that correct? As opposed to, well, they probably, not all of them should have been promoted. So then who do you leave out? And that process now, how do you come to that process? A whole other kettle of worms. We have a caller from St. Anne's on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on here.
Hi, Sean. Good morning.
Morning.
My first intention was to call to give a vigorous rebuttal to what you and Keith and Shaw discussed in the wake of my call yesterday about the public service and how it's not really appreciated, or public officers, I should say. But I decided against that for two reasons. One, media always wins. And two, my comment came out of real lived experience, both in the private and the public sector. I've seen both sides of the equation. I've worked intimately in both sectors, and it was a genuine comment. I think I'll just have to leave it as we agree to disagree in terms of where our collective experiences left us in terms of what we see and what we don't see. My reason for calling in really was to comment on something Mr. Santananda said a while back on your show. Mm-hmm. It concerns, and I don't want to misquote him, but he inferred that he positively brainwashed his children by way of the music he exposed them to, so that he didn't ram it down their throats. He just sort of exposed them to it, and he was seeing years later the impact of that positive brainwashing in terms of the choices they made and the things they allowed themselves to be to gain access to. I remember when I was growing up in this country, we only had 4 radio stations, 2 on the AM dial, 2 on the FM dial, and 1 television station. And within that audio and visual construct, I was exposed to every type of music under the sun. Local music, calypso music, soca, steel band, pop, funk, soul, R&B, jazz, ethnic music from India and Africa, as well as classical music, all within that space. In that time, we've liberalized both our audio waves and our media, visual waves as well by way of television, and we've seen a plethora of stations, and both in terms of radio and television, come on the scene. And what's happened is that every station essentially plays one genre of music. It is possible for a child growing up in Trinidad and Tobago today to never have the experience of hearing Mozart or hearing Shadow because of the one station they tune into. And I think that's sad. Mm-hmm. We've gained more in terms of diversity, but we've lost so much in terms of an identity along the way. And I find that challenging. I don't know. There was a time when the state led in this regard, but as time has gone along, the state has given up its responsibilities and left it in the hands of the individual. And we know what individuals do when they have too much of a good thing. They just go to town with it, and we've seen that with the use of technology in this place. I would hope the state plays a more developmental role in this regard. We have a ministry called Planning and Development. I am not sure, like you and Keaton, what exactly goes on in that ministry. It doesn't seem to have the impact and influence it used to have back in the day. I would like to think that we could rein in some of the things that we see going off key. And hopefully for the new year, we will see some difference in our society, such as it is. That's it.
Thank you, caller. That's an interesting point you've raised there. Well, I mean, planning, yeah, but the thing about the lack of exposure of certain forms of arts and culture is an interesting point, because on some level, the ethics behind it all now, you know, it's not as though people are being denied something. They're not being denied something. To some extent, it's the phenomenon where we are denying ourselves, again, to some extent, because, you know, you don't know what you don't know. So if you like something, you know, it's not even a case of, are you willing to try? Because there will always be people and scenarios where they don't even know to try because they're not exposed. And it's interesting how fine of a line it might actually be on a practical level of between exposing something for the sake of them, hey, have you ever heard this? What do you think about it? And if you don't like it, fine. And ramming it down someone's throats. And like, you know, it's the stereotypical parent who is forcing their child to be a classical pianist or violinist or something. You must, you know, and forcing them to practice and forcing them to take lessons and forcing them to do concerts because they want to live vicariously. And you, I mean, you could say the same thing about other activities, but for the purposes of this discussion, the cultural aspect of it, because it's hard. I don't know if the government, how well the government can intervene. And the excuse, that would be the excuse, right? Because within the narrow confines of the box, the obvious thing would be, well, we have to introduce them to this. And then, no, but you don't want to force it onto them, right? And especially since the human psychology, when you force something onto somebody, they tend to reject it, right? It's harder for them to accept it because they are not making the decision to accept it. They are being forced to accept it. Why would they accept it? And it will have a negative association with that, you know, low-level tyranny as it was. But that doesn't mean that the government can't do something about it, because I think it goes back again to foundations and development and values, and it's the means. That's what makes it hard. That's why governance is hard and leadership is hard, because you don't have simple solutions all the time. The solution might be simple, but it might be difficult to get people to want it. But in this case, there isn't a simple solution, right? In this case, the solution might be complex. How do we set up our society in a way that encourages people naturally to try certain things, to give a first listen to certain things, right? Because some of the greatest artists in any genre tends to be fans of multiple genres. They have rap artists and R&B artists who are also fans of classical music or other art forms. I think Ice-T sang or sings with a heavy metal band, right? He was technically a gangster rapper, I think, from New York. Can't remember exactly which city he's from off the bat, you know? And some of the influences that you could see from some of the other producers like Kanye West, he's heavy into old school R&B, and he brought that then into his into a lot of the tracks that he produced. Now, some are in the way of samples, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. But my point is, you know, there might be some artists who are very narrow in their scope, and that's fine. You know, they're all about this, whatever it is. It could be a jazz musician, a rap artist, whatever. And then there are those who have a wide scope. And then it's the same thing for average citizens to be fans of multiple genres. And the thing about why that is important to society is it goes now back into being able to be open to new things, be willing to experience new things, and to tolerate new things. Because when you are in the bubble, as Mark was saying earlier, ooh, we only about this, we only about soca music or whatever, and you know, to some extent, that will be displayed in a behavior of not wanting to tolerate other. And things like sports and things like arts and performing arts and even like arts and craft, they are lessons that then could translate into society. So one of the things is to understand that my preference is not the be-all and end-all. And I need to, if I want to have friends who have other preferences in music than me, if I want to have friends who have other preferences in sports than me, other preferences in general, and then it turns into, now when I understand that, I could understand how do I navigate people who have other worldviews, other philosophies on life, on governance, on economics. And then that translates up to eventually, how do I work with somebody on the other side of Parliament? So it's a very important, there's a lot to unpack there with that, with when we narrow our scope, how limited we allow our worldview to be. One of my friends, one of the things that frustrated him, and it's not as though he doesn't keep learning, but as an employee, he constantly had to tell his fellow employees, listen, y'all are thinking too narrowly about yourself. Your employer has a business, the business needs to keep running if you want to have a job. And yes, he's making money, but he could just as easily not be making money if wrong decisions are made. And then eventually now he's in management, and the lessons that he learned is even greater with regards to a lot of times people don't understand what it takes to do certain things or to run a business because their scope, their vision is so narrow. I have another acquaintance who went to school in one of the prestigious schools, St. Mary's. I'll say it, St. Mary's. And he valued his time in St. Mary's College, not because of the education or the brand name. No, what he pointed out to me was the variety, the diversity of his friends from all walks of life that exposed him to a whole, broad horizons of perspectives that helped formulate him into the person that he became. And I guess that goes back to what you, Mr. St. Thomas, was saying and what Mr. San Fernando was saying. It's not to ram it down your kids' throats, but you expose them to things and let them have a better understanding of how wide the world is. So one, they can make a better informed decision, but two, they could have a better understanding that, look, it's not just about me and my little bubble. Now, with regards to the community media always wins, I would hope that that's not what happens on this show. We will disagree where we disagree. And my opinions are strong and your opinions are strong. And some of what we had to say was actually not based on was not directed at you. And I get it. You have different experiences to us. Your experiences are different in that, well, not just the results, but also from the fact that you have it as someone who is within. I was not within. All of my experiences are from without, from the outside looking in. So to what extent now, how do we deconflict those two sets of anecdotal, ultimately, experiences? Well, it's kind of difficult to do so. And that's where I will have to accept the agree to disagree, because, whichever way we go, whether to say you are right or I am right, or rather you are more right, I am more right, I have no basis, really, to determine whose opinion takes more precedence over the other. And I guess that's part of the reason why we said what we said. And that's why what we were saying was not necessarily directed at you, because there was no real way to deconflict the differences of opinions of what we have seen and what you have seen. We have a caller from Marima. Sorry, I missed the notice. Caller from Marima, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, you're on the air.
All right. As the year coming to a close, I see the democracy of this country under serious, serious threat. And I say so because of what appointments that being made now. And the politicians having their hand in industrial core. We are the police who are supposed to be biased and unfair. The commissions, judicial and legal, teachers, police, elections and boundaries, all of them. You're seeing where these people hands, kind of strapped now. Because on one hand is either they're strapping you with shortage of funds or the appointments. And then the crime talks that they're not, the politicians ain't even thinking about. It's amazing, it's mind-boggling. And last but not least, the Paria Commission of Inquiry. That's supposed to be released the same day. I am afraid for my country in 2024, you know. Because the government showed me that they care about one person alone, which is the self. Sorry to sound so somber and glum, but this is what you're seeing when you watch how the crime plays. Things that never happened in Trinidad happening. And that's because the place getting more and more desperate. Imagine they're waiting for people to get back to come to spend money. And if you walk around and you really watch, people not really spending because they have. God help us all in 24. Good day, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller. I understand because there are times when I feel exactly the same way. I'll comment more on what you have to say, but I think we have St. Anne's back on the line. Good morning. Morning, you're here?
Hi.
Morning.
Oh, hi.
Go ahead, yeah.
Sean?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize. I'm returning the call because of something you said before in regards to the being exposed to things that are not of your ilk, different cultures, different people. One of the things I failed to mention in my last telephone call with you was when my grandmother, who lived in Venezuela at the time, until she died, discovered my love of music, she sent me, by way of my mother who was visiting, a shortwave radio. And because of that shortwave radio, I gained access to Radio Netherlands, Radio France International, Radio Havana, and of course the BBC, and of course also Voice of America. And that shot my learning and exposure to world events into the stratosphere. Whatever was happening on the local scene was just encapsulated that much further with exposure to that medium. Of course, shortwave radio for the most part no longer exists in the world now that we have cable and the internet, so shortwave is technology of the past. But I just wanted to put a nail on the head of what you were saying, and that exposure, however it's done, whether deliberately, whether by accident, whether by design, it is imperative for children, and I dare say adults, to get more exposure to the world around them, to the world in which we live, to get a sense of how other people perceive the world. One of the things my father did when I was growing up was expose me to the music of James Last and Mantavan and his orchestra. He seems to think, and we were having a discussion the other day, he's in his 80s, that I used to complain a lot about the music that he was playing. I remember it differently. As a child, I just complained about the frequency with which it was played. His record collection was relatively small. So exposure is important, and it really should not be taken for granted. Even with all the information that's coming up, that's being exposed to everybody, it's all based on an algorithm. What you like gets replicated over and over again, and that choice of choosing for yourself is highly questionable. When Yahoo, for example, first debuted, we were all seeing the same Yahoo in America, in Europe, and then they discovered the algorithm and it all changed. What we saw was what we clicked on, and that's become the norm for all social media. You're exposed to your own prejudices and biases over and over again. And stepping outside that box takes real courage sometimes, particularly when that's all that's being driven at you. That's it.
Thanks, caller. Yes, that leads me to the point that I did want to make, that now we actually might have the problem in some ways, not entirely, of overexposure. And we need to manage the exposure. And now the question is, do we need to self-regulate or do we need a third party to regulate? Because the question is not about the content. I don't have an issue with the content. quality of what we're exposed to is the issue, right? And those are not the same thing. A lot of people will confuse what the content is because they don't like it, so they'll say it's bad quality, as opposed to the bad quality of analysis, the bad quality of evidence, of reason, of logical arguments, the bad quality of objectivity, right? Then therein, you know, the overexposure is bad. We have someone on the line. Good morning, caller, you're on the air.
A very good morning to you, Sean Michael.
Morning, morning.
And compliments of the season.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sean, this burning question of the president of the recently outgoing president of the Industrial Court, Deborah Thomas Felix is her name. But remember too, Sean, that
caller?
this trap and is for the government of the day to renew your contract, you know. She doesn't own that position as president of the Industrial Court.
Yeah.
She has been there at the Industrial Court from what I understand, since 2011, 12 years. I don't know if she was 12 years as president of the Industrial Court. But you have to bear in mind that nobody owns a position in this country, you know. Bear in mind, Sean, that she's on contract.
Yes.
The government of the day has a duty to either renew your contract and allow you to continue in that position, or they may say, well, it is time for you, madam, to move on and let us appoint somebody else. Because we have had former presidents, people like Leo Ramchan, who was at one time president of the same Industrial Court. He served his time, his term in office, and then his contract wasn't renewed. He moved on. There was another attorney, Addison Khan, who served as president of the Industrial Court for a period of time. And then the government say, well, we will not renew your contract. So this big issue that the trade unions and other people making, Deborah Thomas Felix, with all due respect to the good lady, she doesn't own that position. It is up to the government to renew your contract, whether you like it or not. And I don't want to go into the issues with her because some of the business people feel that she was ruling more against the business community and more in favor of the workers with all the... But that is for another time and place. But I just want to make it...
Yeah.
This big hullabaloo inclusion, Sean, over this, the non-renewal of the lady's contract. I mean, let us move on now. Her term... The government didn't see it fit to renew her contract. They have appointed somebody else, and let us take it up from there. Thank you very much for giving me
Thank you, caller. Now, technically, is it the government's call or is it the president's call? Because the president's supposed to be independent. I'll say more on that topic after this last caller from Cascade. Good morning, caller. You're on the air. Caller, good morning.
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 Good morning, Sean. Sean, I really can't help but say to you that when I listen to your callers, I get the sense that we have a lot of angry people out there, a lot of concerned people, a lot of people who want the best for Trinidad and Tobago. And in their own way, they are crying out, like as it were, in the wilderness, hoping and anticipating that there will be some kind of miraculous healing for Trinidad and Tobago. But Trinidad and Tobago will only be healed when every citizen recognizes that they have a responsibility to fix Trinidad and Tobago. And fixing Trinidad and Tobago is not going to be an overnight thing. It's not going to happen in the life of any one government. It has to be a sustained, consistent effort to bring about a better society where people are put at the center of all that we do. I don't think people are put at the center of all that we do. What is put at the center of all that we do? The first thing is money. The second thing is money. The third thing is money. And the powers that be use the money to manipulate and manage the hearts and minds of people who are in search of money, money, money. If we do one thing this Christmas, is come to recognize that there are many things more important than money, 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 and begin to think country, country, country. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, caller. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, at some point we have to look at ourselves and say, are we doing enough ourselves? Because we spend money to the businesses. We're their customers, right? We elect the politicians. We're their voters. That's where their support comes from. We are where the support of all the people who we want to blame, the big business interests, the big financiers, the blah, 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 blah. Hell, even the drug lords, where do they get their money from? From us. We are their customers. I say I'm not a customer of a drug dealer. But society has people who buy these things, gives them our money, and then we lament, oh my gosh, look at what they're using our money to do. Look at what they're using our votes and support to do. So at some point we have to realize, yes, it's not so simple. We can't just today tell the Prime Minister, abdicate, we want somebody else. Right. It's not that easy. It's not that simplistic. But the principle is actually quite simple. And it's if we are willing to exercise our responsibility and duty to ourselves first. And this is why I kind of get frustrated with regards to some business people lamenting about crime and corruption or whatever. Are you actually part of the solution, or are you unwittingly or intentionally part of the problem? Now, with regards to the President of the Industrial Court, I will just say this. I understand what you have to say, caller. And I did mention the fact that it helped that who was appointed to replace her was somebody who was a part of the Industrial Court, you know, and it was not outsider. Because if it was an outsider, it would look like a fiasco. However, the problem is not so much that I have what the union said, because the union has now said today, we'll work with the person, you know, but they still have their concerns. My issue is the perception. And I think that was what the first caller had as well. It's the perception. You are behind on the perception index of being transparent, of acting in good faith, or being seen to be acting in good faith. That is what the government's challenge has to deal with. And if the opposition comes into power in the next general election, it's not as though they will have a better perception. Let's be frank, right? Because part of the problem is not just with the politicians themselves, but also how government is run and operated and just in general, right? But at the end of the day, after everything that happened with the Police Service Commission, right, the Chief Justice and his perception, and then the person who appointed the new president, right, to what extent she is involved in the actual decision making, the president, and her objectivity when, you know, one of the first things she does in office, hey, husband, senior counsel, bam. Now, the sad part about it is, even in that situation, it was not about the fact that he was appointed. Because I don't know, I'm not in that legal circle to know if he deserves senior counsel or not. It was the perception of just about one of the first things, if not the first thing she did, was to give her husband and her brother senior counsel. The perception was bad. This is at the end of the day, you know, if you keep giving people a bad look, they will assume the worst out of you. And it doesn't help that now it seems like they're stalling the Commissioner of Inquiry for Paria. Right? So the government, the decision is not the issue out with no context, right? In a vacuum. The problem is how they did it and what they communicated about it in the environment of the perception that there is corruption, a lack of accountability and transparency, and that a lot of the decisions are made for the benefit of the party and the party supporters as opposed to the country. Because there were major situations that were probably going to be heard by the Industrial Court pretty soon. And now we have to ask, is it quite convenient that her contract is up and wasn't renewed so that they could replace her? Now again, it helped that they replaced her with someone from within the Industrial Court. Will we see major policy shifts? I don't know. But one could argue, maybe the business community put pressure on the government. Some of the financiers said, hey, we don't like her rulings, pro-labor rulings. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all part of what a lack of transparency means. because you're not making it clear and being above board and doing everything, you know, reporting to us properly about why you're doing things, we're left to speculate. And the results of what we've seen, it's difficult to give you the benefit of the doubt. And that's my issue with the whole thing. Folks, today's a good day to have a good day, as my co-host always says. And you can make today the start of a great weekend. I know some people might still have to work out their Fridays. I myself still have a few things to do. But this could be the start of a great weekend. If we make it so, we could do it if we try. And we need to start now. Don't wait. Time is finite. But we will have to wait for the next edition of Talking Point, because we will see you next week. Bye-bye.